So luckily, you got one of the hardest things down. You got something to talk about, right? You got something you're passionate about. You got something you're knowledgeable about, and you have ideas. Podcasters will always be like, I need to have guests, or I need to have a co-host, or I need to do a solo show. But you can do both. You can do all three. You could have a roundtable discussion. Like, people always go like, what should my podcast be? And I just go, it's whatever you want it to be. It can be literally whatever you want it to be. Talking with Tarashuk, half the time, it's conversations like these, where we're sitting down and discussing something. Other times, it's my friends and family, who we just kind of talk and love the glory days or what have you. Other times, it's random strangers I met on Facebook. And other times, it's me and Christian in this studio asking random lists of questions. But it's all the same podcast.
Yeah.
It's all the same podcast. It's just, what's the podcast this week? It's whatever I want it to be. So, would you rather have more guests, more solo shows, or what would you prefer? Because there really is no difference. It comes down to preference.
Oh, that just unboxed a lot of questions I have for you. But,
okay, shoot.
To answer your question, I rather have more guests because I can also much contribute to this field. I can only talk about what I'm going through. But what would be cool is if a lot of people started talking about what they're going through, so that the ones that are depressed, the ones that are, because there's a shortage of doctors in this country. Like, there's a severe shortage. And my theory is that a lot of people are looking at this field like, oh my God, I have to sell my soul and not do anything else for a decade. And I'm just like, no, you can go in this field and then just come here, talk about it, make your own content, create your own podcast, your own channel. It's therapeutic. Talking to even just a microphone about the things that you're going through is very nice. And that's amazing if someone can connect with you. So I'd rather have a lot of guests, get a lot of voices out, a lot of stories out. My question for you is, if a medical student wants to create a podcast, do you think, like, for example, like me, should they have that niche? Should they kind of use it like a diary? Does it matter?
It depends what they want to do, right? Like, this, because they are a medical student, and medical student is a lot of their life, doesn't mean the podcast necessarily has to be about medicine, right? It can be about NASCAR. Maybe they're really into NASCAR.
Yeah.
But if they're looking for it to be a part of their career, I think it should be about medicine. It should be about what you're doing. You could talk to your classmates. You can talk about what you're learning currently. What someone, their studying process. And we got a final coming up. Like, how are you prepping for that?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just a way to bounce off ideas. Like, it's pretty much a conversation you have at the lunch table, just microphone instead of like a sandwich.
A lot of students stray away from things like that because they think it's going to be so time consuming and it's going to take them away from their studies. Is it time consuming? Because I personally don't think it is. Like you just said, it's a lunch table talk. Just record it.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be. Like, what I do is incredibly time consuming. That's because it's my job, right?
Yeah.
I make it time consuming. In reality, all you really need, if it's if it's in person, you need a little more equipment because you're going to need 2 mics. If it's over remote, like if you're at home and you want to do it over Zoom and the guest wants to do it over Zoom, you only need a USB mic. It helps if they have a mic, but they don't necessarily need one. Successful podcasts don't need this crazy grandiose.
They can just start with anything.
They can start with anything.
As long as they start.
Yeah, as long as you start. So does it need to be time consuming? It doesn't have to be. It can help. Like, you want good sounding audio. Video helps because it's another medium. There are other avenues to do, but if it just kind of is raw and gritty, that can still be successful. Because look at the biggest budget podcast. Like, if CNN came up with a podcast, no one listens to that. No one cares. They can put $1 million behind it. People don't care. People care more about what you have to say than how it looks like when you're saying it.
And so I love how we're tying these two together. It fits perfectly. Would you say that there is a possible way of also making money when podcasting?
Yeah.
I'm asking because medical school is expensive. And if someone can hit a hobby or an outlet or a way of expressing themselves and just getting out of that field for a moment, like an hour a day, just get your head out of there and make money while doing so, like just doing something fun, that is also a great thing. So how would one do that if you can do that?
That's a great question for Jared. But making money through podcasting, working with APS, you know, for a medical student, it would be hard because, you know, you don't have anything to sell, really, right?
I guess it would just be your audience.
It would be your audience. So you would want to find sponsorships in the field, you know, like...
Actually, that's not hard either, because there's so little people doing this right now that...
If there's a hole for it, you can find, like, BetterHelp.
I think that anyone who wants to create their channel can easily get sponsorships from a lot of brands. BetterHelp is someone who does advertise on podcasts. Okay.
And you know BetterHelp, it's like online therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they do sponsorships. They do a lot of YouTube channels as well. Different like On It supplements. Like there are health and fitness sponsorships out there. What I would do is if you're trying to find sponsorships, go listen to podcasts that are similar in your field and just listen to their ads and just jot down the advertisers and just find a pattern.
That's smart.
So like I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan. I had a time for like a month. I wrote down all of his sponsorships and just to see what was there and what the thread was, what the connection was. And
that makes sense.
Who is their target audience and how does that line up with mine, right? Or a wrestling show I did. It's a lot of this a wrestling show I follow. Excuse me. A lot of the same advertisers. It's also targeted towards men, 18 to 40. That's mostly probably who listens to podcasts, unless it's a murder podcast, then it's targeted towards women. Like if you listen to like My Favorite Murder or other true crime podcasts, you'd probably find a lot of the advertisements there are probably geared toward women. So if you're trying to make money, I would start there. Just try and find a pattern for what advertisers are looking for and try and figure out what makes those shows successful and how you can follow that path as well as divert and find your own little niche.
There's definitely a way of doing it.
Yeah, but if you want to make money, the first thing you need is an audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need a following. You got to be out there. You know, TikTok is great right now. The most growth I'm seeing right now is on TikTok. Instagram makes me want to throw my phone out a window, but it helps to put it all there as well because they're trying to make the push for Reels.
Yeah.
YouTube Shorts, you know, I had a pretty rough September, but towards the end of September, it was kind of out of nowhere, gotten a bunch more views. So growth is slow but steady. If you're going into the podcast to make money immediately,
it's not probably,
don't.
I'm saying they should get into it because it's very therapeutic.
Yeah. I mean, it's always cliche to a point, but yeah, I've called podcasting therapy for years. I am my most authentic self on a podcast. It's like, you know, I get very uncomfortable at like networking events or public speaking or when there's a lot of people around. Sometimes I kind of freeze up. At college parties, I always froze up. But on a podcast, it's just different. I'm in more control.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in control and I'm not afraid. That makes sense.
Yeah, you're speaking your truth.
Yeah, it's just easy to talk. It's just easier.
If you don't want to listen, just go turn it off.
Yeah, if they don't listen, who cares? Although it is kind of weird for me. Like I was at a family party this past weekend. Shout out to my cousin Kevin and Hannah for getting married. And all my aunts and uncles would be like, you know, your podcast, this, that, and the other. Like, you know, you talk about this. And I kind of like, I don't like talking about it. And like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's like,
I get that.
Especially certain segments from Talk with Tarashuk. It's just like, because me and Christian will go pretty wild sometimes.
Yeah, I know.
But it's just like, oh, they had to bring up that one, right? But it's just like it's
I hear a second of it, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a little weird hearing like I like my podcast in my internet bubble, right? I like it, you know.
Yeah.
When it comes into the real world and talking to actual people, it's a little uncomfortable still. But you say, thanks for listening, I appreciate it, and this, that, and the other. You know, I know, don't swear as much. Sorry.